Greetings, all, and welcome to Esoteric Babble. Today, we are continuing our conversations with illustrious and amazing people. And who more illustrious and amazing than Tobin Swafford, Mr. Bhakti himself? So, Tobin, I turn it over to you. Well, I guess I should say, first of all, I think are we both on the same planet? Are we able to disclose that information? I am coming from planet Earth. I am not in orbit about planet Earth. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I can say that much. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
on the same planet.
All right. Yeah, that seems fair then. All right. So, and I should also point out this is New Year's Eve, right? I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of people are going out probably right about now. But yeah, so I turn it over to you. Um, would you like to share something about yourself and your journey?
I'm just a regular guy who's had some irregular experiences. Uh, that's
Beautifully said.
that's the main gist of me. I like I said, just an ordinary guy. I work in a factory and I goof off on the internet and read books and meditate and do stuff like that. Uh, but no, there's nothing really extraordinary about me, I don't think.
Oh, I would beg to differ. I very much beg to differ. I wish all of what you said was ordinary. Um, um, but no, and I think, I mean, one thing I think that most people know about you who've met you, who know you, is you embody agape, I think. Spiritual
Uh,
love, I would say.
well, I tried to. I had a profound experience of agape at one point, a direct experience, and that really opened up my heart um, and just made me realize what the spiritual journey is all about, and it is getting in tune with that deep feeling of spiritual love. When we do that, we want to bring everybody with us.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want to leave everybody or anybody behind on the spiritual journey. So it's kind of like the bodhisattva vow in Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have tasted that liberation and that an awakening experience or divine love, you want to kind of spread that around, and tell it tell bring as many people along as you can. So yeah,
That's beautiful. Beautifully said.
and I think that the concept of agape is a Christian concept, and I am a practicing Episcopalian, but I read widely in all religions, and even in New Age secular spirituality, and I find that concept across the board.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't read too much about Judaism, but I'm sure it's there somewhere. And
Uh,
but in Buddhism, we have the concept of metta,
mm-hmm.
is a loving kindness meditation, or the concept of loving kindness, which I think is comparable to agape, and
Right on. Yeah.
maybe not with the same profound implications as Buddhism, because they have a different concept of it's just a different religion altogether.
Mm-hmm.
But and in Hinduism, we have bhakti yoga, which is the practice of devotion and love, and you just love until you become love,
Mm-hmm.
the love of God, and of course Christianity, agape, and the so there's and these are ancient traditions that go back to the foundings of these religions. They've all recognized uh, divine love at some point. It's it, so yeah. So the idea is to uh, is to spread that around as much as possible. That becomes the purpose after you realize it becomes the purpose of life once you realize uh, that once you have that experience, once you have that direct experience of agape or divine love. So
Yeah, and it seems to me that there's a lot that goes with that. It's uh like love is, I was just driving around today, and you hate to say it, but sometimes you can look at people who are walking and you just feel like these people have never experienced any amount of love in their lives.
Yeah.
And beyond that, even I think like the, I guess a part of agape and metta is like not being aggressive, not being offensive. So it's not simply, or I shouldn't say not simply love, but it's this love has a lot of different aspects, I guess. Um, how would you say, or would you say, are there good ways to manifest? How would, if someone's interested in this, how can they practically go about manifesting agape or metta or bhakti?
Uh, that I'm not exactly sure. I think I can recommend a few things, but it to me it came through a revelation of grace,
Mm,
and there's nothing that is completely beyond an individual's control. It's just something that happens for some reason. It's
mhm,
mysterious, and you know, people often experience these kinds of awakenings or profound love it, often in their deepest moment of despair in life.
mhm,
So when they're experiencing great darkness for some reason, financial troubles, bankruptcy, divorce, the loss of a loved one, uh, deep dark depression for any reason, uh, oftentimes that is when agape, the grace of agape comes in. It's like a saving grace almost.
mhm.
It's like God has recognized you have suffered so much that you need a little break.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. A moment
So
of clarity, maybe.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I think to if there's anything you can do to induce the experience of agape, it would be the spiritual practices in general. Anything having to do with loving kindness, meditation, I think, is key on the
Mhm,
spiritual path. Even though I'm not a Buddhist or a Hindu, I meditate daily,
mhm,
and I think that has helped me a great deal. I think it's probably the single most important tool in the spiritual path
mhm.
is meditation. It's becoming more widely popular, more in a secular way here in America, but there are people here who meditate for spiritual reasons,
True. Yeah. True.
and I think that is important. Prayer. I think we can get a little taste of divine love through a daily prayer practice with prayer. Uh, for example, I before each time I meditate, I say a prayer, and this could be in any tradition that you feel comfortable with. I'm not going to, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say one religion is better than
Mhm.
another religion,
Right. Right.
uh, because I think they're all valid, um, and they can all lead to this divine love. So, um, some people have had awakening experiences through yoga, and
Mhm.
that's something I've not got much experience with, but that's something that can induce a kind of awakening experience. And so reading widely about spirituality, I think, is important as well. Uh, read about bhakti yoga,
Mhm.
read about metta and agape. Read the Christian philosophers
Mhm.
and the Buddhists, and so. But when it comes down to it, I think the direct experience of agape in its fully blown form is a matter of grace. And I don't know what it is that, how that happens.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just it's mysterious. I'm reading a book right now by Ken MacLeod, who is an American Buddhist, and he talks a lot about uh, awakening to the mystery of life. How
Mhm.
we don't really know uh, um, what is going to happen next, what in the next moment.
Right.
How how we were continuously stepping into a mystery. And
Mm.
I think grace is the same way. You never know when it'll come along. So, and I feel very fortunate that it did for me. But uh, and it came to me through a time of intense suffering, and
Mhm.
that's how I know for sure when people speak of that it's true that it happens that way sometimes.
Right, right. And and by the way, sorry you had to go through that suffering, but it does seem
Oh,
like there was a silver lining there.
yeah,
Um,
I wouldn't trade it for anything.
well,
After having that experience, it was all worth
well, that's good to know.
it.
Um, and it does seem like when you talk about reading about spirituality, something that comes up a lot is sort of de-emphasizing the self, de-emphasizing our desire for things, um, possessing things, clinging to things. It seems like that is possibly connected to love, maybe putting other people first, or if not putting other people first, at least considering that there are other people and beings on the planet who have needs and who have their own lives to lead. And so
Yeah,
maybe um
yeah. It's definitely when awakening experiences occur, we see the futility of materialism,
mhm,
and in both of its aspects, materialism as an explanation for reality in a
mhm.
philosophical sense, and materialism as in collecting stuff,
Yeah, right, yeah,
getting more money, a bigger
mhm,
house, and
mhm,
car, and all these things. They sort of become meaningless. Those two pursuits, those that understanding and that pursuit of wealth and acquiring things, because we see that the most important thing is other people,
mhm,
the and our connections with people, and cultivating an attitude of openness and loving
mhm.
kindness toward everyone. And even people, you alluded to people that you've run across that are very dark or hateful, or they don't seem like they've got much love in them. It's important to respond to those kinds of people, in particular, with love.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
you, I think it was Martin Luther King Jr. who said that you cannot fight hate with more hate. The only thing you can stop hate with is love. And
Right.
I'm paraphrasing there. That's not
Yeah.
his exact word, uh, uh, but yeah,
No, that sentiment seems right, and I think that's absolutely true. And that is probably one of the biggest challenges on the spiritual path. And that's, without de-emphasizing ourselves, without sort of lessening, I must always be right, or I must always sort of be, um, or I should never be wronged. Um, to, like you said, to respond with love, even when people are sort of hateful. I mean,
mm,
that's the best you can, that's our response, and that
yeah,
is, and that I think that is the spiritual path. When we can do that, that is, it's quite a
yeah.
feat, actually, sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, it shows development, that's for sure. And in Buddhism, they have a saying. I think the Dalai Lama has said this. He said that if you cannot help people, at least do them no harm.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so we run across people who are in a dark place, or people who are hateful or angry, and oftentimes there's not much we can do about it. But at the
Right.
very least, we can not respond in kind,
That's right.
and and escalate the situation, or do harm.
That's so true. And and I haven't had I haven't had like innumerable encounters like this, but I have had encounters, and probably we all have, where someone seems to be coming from a place of hate, and when you respond with kindness, they change.
Yeah,
So that, it's possible that, like, the first, your first impression, uh you don't have to respond, like you said, in kind, and maybe something right beneath the surface is ready to come out.
Yeah, I believe there. I mean, there are some really damaged people among us who seem to have no capacity for love. You think about people like sociopaths and
Yeah.
killers, those kinds of people. They seem to be far far removed from love as they really be. But those damaged souls. I think I can't say that they have the capacity for love, but I think the vast majority of people, over 99% of people, do have the capacity for love,
Right.
even if they're dark or and or hateful, um, and we can awaken that in them
Right.
by being loving, by responding to them in a loving manner, and it's just they at least it can stop things. If they're on a rampage of some sort, a response of love or kindness in that situation maybe can halt something
Mm-hmm.
that if they don't respond with love, that maybe it diffuses them to some degree. You
Yeah,
know.
I think so, for sure. Um, yeah, that's very true. Um, Now, I do have one question, and this maybe will seem unconnected, and maybe it is. I don't know, but how important do you think it is? Like, well, how important do you think, say, a belief in the transcendent is? I mean, I think on the spiritual path, it's pretty important, but in terms of a society, um, and I don't exactly know how I'm not exactly sure what my question is, but well, let's put it like that. How important is it for people to believe in a transcendent? Because we all know that there are people who profess a belief in God, but they act as if, or I
Yeah.
don't know what God they are
Yeah.
professing a belief in. So,
Yeah.
um, what if? Well, I'll just leave it at that, and I'll let you run with
Well,
that.
uh, you're talking about the belief in a transcendent dimension,
Right? Yes.
uh, and I think that most people when they think of that they think of heaven.
Mhm.
Most people in America anyway. Most of us are Christians or have a Christian background at least,
Mhm.
and um, so we think of heaven, but I think that the transcendent dimension, or the transcendent dimension, there might be more of them,
Mhm.
is here and now,
Mhm.
and the that's another thing that I did want to talk about tonight. The primacy or the ubiquitousness of the present moment,
Mhm.
the eternal here and now. Um, a transcendent dimension in that regard is ordinarily the vast majority of people they go through life perceiving reality through a filter of sorts or a lens, a colored lens, say that distorts reality, and this is made up of their conditioning uh, from the past,
Mhm.
and it's an habitual kind of thing. It's um, uh, the way they see the world is heavily colored, and they're the flip side of that is anxiety about the future. Um,
Yes, sir.
uh, so so people uh, are kind of going back and forth between these two kinds of states of memory and fantasy, or the past and the future, and the shouldn't have brought pop to the meeting session.
No, that's all right. Yeah, no, I had a
But
cough drop, so you know,
But the most common mental illnesses in America, and these go hand in hand. They're often present in the same person, are depression and anxiety,
Hmm.
and those are the most commonly prescribed drugs for mental illness in America: antidepressants and anti-anxiety drugs. And this is rooted in not being able to perceive reality as it is in the moment,
Mhm.
not, the inability to be here and now. And um, I've talked to people about this before, and it frightens. Uh, the idea of letting go of their conditioning, letting go of the past, and letting go of, you know, hopes about the future, or their anxieties. People will hang on to their anxiety, and and just being in the moment, and a place of great clarity, and but uh, so many people just aren't here totally.
Right.
The body is here. This sounds almost inane to people who I think are uninitiated in the concept. They might think, well, I'm here now. Aren't we all here
Mm.
now? You know, aren't we all present? And the answer is yes and no. The body is always present, and a good way to mentally hone in on the present moment is to become aware of the body.
Mhm.
With the body in meditation, feel it, feel where the tensions are in the body, where you're holding on, and just to go into the body and truly feel it. And that's a one way of becoming more present in the moment. So, but yeah, most people aren't fully here. In their minds, they are partially, at least, elsewhere, and sometimes totally. It's totally devoid of any presence,
Yes.
and and but this is the teaching on presence, and the eternal moment, and the here and now. These are ancient teachings, uh, uh, more closely um, uh, uh, related to Eastern philosophy.
Mhm.
Uh, I've seen this more in Buddhist and Hindu thought than in Christianity, but it is in Western traditions as well.
Certainly.
Jesus speaks of it in the Sermon on the Mount,
Mm.
and I think it's Matthew 6 25 to 34, something like that. And there, where he talks about the disciples worrying about the future and what they will wear and what they will eat,
Right.
and you know, and so, saying something to the effect of, why worry about tomorrow when there is enough trouble for today? You know, there's
Right.
enough
Yes.
going on today. You don't have to worry about the future any. So the concept of the here and now concept is present in all wisdom traditions, I do believe, and
Absolutely.
um, but some more prominently than others. And there are people who are secular spiritualists who have caught on to this as well.
Mm.
Eckhart Tolle's one. Of course, he had the amazingly famous book, The Power of Now, and
Mhm.
sold millions of copies of that. And it really introduced the West to this, in a wide sense, to this concept of the here and now. And
Absolutely.
Ram Dass was talking about it back in the early 70s when he brought it back from India, his time in India with teachers over there, and his book, Be Here Now.
Mhm.
And you know, Richard Rohr talks about it in his book, The Naked Now. Richard Rohr
Mm.
is a Catholic priest, and he's fully on board with the philosophy of
Right. Right.
and another secular spiritualist, Steve Taylor,
Mm.
writes about this kind of thing often, and so it's and across the board, it's probably uh, you know, up there with divine love as far as an important spiritual go, and the those two things are my saving grace. Uh, those are where I get my concept of
Mm.
salvation.
Well, those seem like the bedrock of, like you said, about all traditions. I mean, that's yeah, that's a strong foundation.
Yeah.
Um, one thing, I think if people do feel that it's inane to say we'll be here now. Um, I always surprised when I just reflect a little bit how I think our minds can create heaven and hell, but they, for some reason, and I'll speak for myself, but it seems like with a lot of people, they tend to create hell more often. You just start getting into these flights, like you said, there's anxiety about the future. And I mean, it's probably a reaction to the world we live in. We don't know what's going to happen, and there are pressures upon us. So your mind can create a really unpleasant environment.
Yes.
And so letting that quiet down is, there are many benefits to that. And even immediately, even if it's only for a second or two, you can start to realize like, oh, it doesn't have to be that way.
Hmm.
So yeah, that to me is like, I totally agree with you there. That is a very powerful thing. We must be in the moment and try to work at decluttering the mind, or just letting it all kind of dissipate.
Yeah, that meditation is the most powerful tool for quieting the mind and becoming coming into present.
Mm.
And I recommend that to everybody, no matter what your spiritual background might be. I don't think it's you're a Christian. I don't think you're going to. I don't think it's a sin to practice meditation.
Right,
You know,
for sure.
and
Yeah, I don't know that people ever practice meditation and just think, well, that was a waste of time. I really don't. If they pursue it a little. I mean, some people get bored with it, but in general, I think people understand it has a lot of value. Um,
yeah,
um, Now, there's one other question I would have for you, and it's something I've thought about a little bit. This word spiritual. Um, I I understand what it means. I mean, I understand kind of what it refers to. And I don't know if you have a definition or if definitions are that important, but it seems to me that spiritual, like undertaking a spiritual life, sort of means that we are putting consciousness above matter. In other words, we're saying that consciousness is the reality and matter is, if not, I don't know if it's an illusion, but that we're inverting the script that we kind of grow up with in the West, that everything arises from matter, that consciousness is an epiphenomenon, and so on and so forth. So um I feel like that's the reason, or that's what spirituality is. It's taking that seriously and believing that we have choices, we're not robots,
mhm,
and that consciousness is a real sort of, what would we say, indivisible phenomenon. And that was not the word I was looking for, but we'll go with that one. So, do you have any comments on that?
well, when I think of a soul or the spirit, I think of that which survives the physical form.
Right.
And I don't know exactly what that is. If it may be just pure consciousness that this that the awareness survives death, and that is the soul. And this could be the same in everybody. I've heard mystics from Eastern traditions. It's all one, and even physical reality is all one. But
Mm-hmm.
awareness, that but even that, I've heard it taken to the extreme that awareness or consciousness all that exists,
Mm-hmm.
that we're kind of like each a facet, an expression of that consciousness in its infinite, in an infinite kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Everything in the universe is kind of like that, and but yeah, I never really thought to try to define the soul or spirituality. I just know it when I hear it.
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, and that's true. I think it is very hard to define.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I think it certainly is. uh, Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like it's opposed to materialism or
Yeah,
physicalism. Whatever spirituality is, it tends to be on some level in opposition to materialism.
Yeah.
And like
I,
you said, on both those levels, and that's a really good point. Not simply don't buy things or don't invest in, the things of the world, but that the world is only material stuff.
yeah. The in the West, in particular, we're kind of caught in that materialism, and even though most people in America profess some sort of spirituality, even if they don't have a regular practice and they go to church or anything like that, most of us have bought into the materialist worldview here in the West. Uh, the um, the even our religion to some degree has become materialistic,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and both in the philosophical sense and in the in the physical sense, where we have things like the prosperity gospel and
Yes.
huge mega churches with multi-millionaire pastors and things of that nature.
Yes, for sure.
So um, so it's a pervasive kind of thing, and we've kind of exported this to the rest of the world. I think America is an empire now, and we pretty much dominate in the world with our economic system and our military.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the American military. It seems to me to be like the enforcer of our export
Yeah.
of our way of life, and but um, so this is it's kind of gone around the globe now. This materialism the and and we see places that were formerly even communist kind of being capitalist now and
Y-
materialistic.
sure.
Like China is supposed to be a communist nation, but it's actually a state capitalist nation.
Right.
There's billionaires in China now.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
And,
Yeah.
and um, places that were formerly a part of of Russia and the Soviet Union, like Ukraine, very much wants to into this materialistic Western kind of king. I don't think what Russia is doing to Ukraine is right, and that there should be no war there. But Ukraine very much wanted to be a part of the European Union,
Mm.
and I've talked to a Ukrainian and in the past, and this is kind of it was like talking to uh, a Republican from the 1980s.
Mhm. Right. Yeah. Right.
A
Mm.
Reagan era kind of Republican, and so we've kind of exported our philosophy and our way of life to the globe now, and it's to some extent everywhere now.
Hmm.
The the thing is that this is happening at the same time as a resurgence in spirituality in the West, in Europe, and in America, and maybe Canada. Uh, the it's I refer to it as secular spiritualism. But it's people who have seen through the facade of the glory of materialism,
Hmm.
and and uh, and uh, and they can't really buy into a particular religion, but at the same time they're deeply spiritual, and
Right.
um, uh, so it's kind of like they have that intellectual kind of uh, uh, mindset going on uh, but at the same time they see the need for spirituality again, and they we're seeing this manifest in a couple of different ways. In secular spirituality, people in things like New Age, and I think the near with the popularization of near-death experiences, people
Hmm.
having experiences of life beyond physical form. Uh, that's basically its own little genre now in the publishing industry. There's so many books about that there now. I've read a lot of them, and those are always inspiring to me. And most of those people come back from those experiences unafraid of death, more spiritual, uh, and not really particularly promoting a particular faith or religion
Right.
so much as the concept of afterlife and divine love. And so um, I think it's kind of a uh, uh, that's kind of a resurgence, a new spirituality that's coming into the West. And I hope that the East in particular is not too much influenced by Western materialism. I know that India is we see them as an emerging economy now, and capital go and China as well, and China's economy is on pace to take over our own as the world's largest
Mm.
economy. And and for a long time, there's been a void in China of spirituality. It's still there, but with the government they've got going on over there, it's it's sort of, I don't know a whole lot about it, but it seems like it's like it's sort of prohibited,
Right.
to some degree, and to be spiritual. But yeah, I hope that those that area of the world in particular can recover their deep spirituality. I think India's probably for the longest time been the most spiritual place on the planet, and
Yeah.
I hope they retain that.
Right. Me too. Seems like they're doing a pretty good job so
Yeah.
far. So, okay. So I have basically one more question, and it's um, it's to do with skeptics. How how can I say this? Not so interested in converting skeptics, but when meeting skeptics who say that this is all nonsense, the spiritual path is nonsense, or some version of that.
Mhm.
What are there ways that the the person on the spiritual path can respond? Like, are there practices that could be suggested, etc.? I hand it over to you.
Well, I tend to try to avoid getting into any kind of philosophical arguments with. It doesn't do anything, but uh, it just weighs heavily on me to do that. And
Mhm.
I sort of have the mentality that they're going to find out too someday. That something is going to happen to them, and it might not be until they're on their deathbed, but the, at some point or in a different lifetime or in the spirit realm,
Mhm.
they're gonna have a conversion too.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Sure.
So that and God loves them just as much as He does any religious or spiritual person.
Hmm.
So I uh, I could say that if you there are some people who are spiritual who really like to get in and sling some mud with the skeptics and like to argue with them. I've seen that on social media. I don't think that's necessary. And if I I just if I don't really run across that too much out in the world.
Hmm.
Well, one thing I don't like the way I'm speaking now in this interview. It's not it's not how I normally conduct myself out in at the workplace and out in
Right. Yeah.
society.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm sure if I did, I would run across more skeptics in that way.
Sure. Sure.
More resistance.
Right. Right. Um,
But uh, I tend to go in the moment, however reality is presenting itself in the moment, and I'm aware and here and fully present. The most wholesome thing to do will be apparent. And
right. That's very well said.
so if you run across a skeptic, that's up to you. I would just not so much ignore it as just try to change the topic.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, and I do think it's a good point. I think that um, skeptics and, most of us, we tend to take things very literally. And maybe if someone instead of like trying to win some argument, like you said, some philosophical argument, maybe just point out the benefits, the efficacy of certain practices. Like I think most people, um, when I don't know what percentage, but I feel like a large amount of people feel that meditation is useful,
Uh-huh.
even just on like a physical level. And maybe that there's a lot to be said for, the spiritual path maybe is more of a poetic um, version of life and not so prosaic.
Yeah, it's definitely an art form.
Yeah, yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
The, I think the problem with skeptics is that it is they just don't really know fully what they're denying.
right, right,
You talk about speaking to them about the benefits of things like meditation. They've never tried it,
right, right.
and you got to do it for more than a day or a week. This is something that's a long term kind of commitment. So for things like contemplative prayer and meditation to be noticeable as being beneficial, it takes about a year,
Yeah,
or
right.
it can take that long before you really start noticing uh, how much better your life is becoming. But it does.
Right.
It almost universally. If you do these things, if you meditate and read about spirituality and do it every day, your life will get better. It's just it maybe uh, uh, your life will get better, but even if bad things still happen to you, sometimes your perception and how you react to those things will change, and to where you're more likely to do the right thing. It's part of the Eightfold Path
Yeah,
in
for sure.
Buddhism,
Yeah,
where
absolutely.
after a certain amount of spiritual illumination, you know exactly how to speak and exactly the
Mm.
right thing to do, right action, things of
Right.
that nature. So this is what meditation does for us and spiritual practice in general. Um, you know, uh, some 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 sometimes spirituality can be taken over, like a church or a cult can be taken over by someone who has nefarious
Mhm.
ideas, a manipulator, somebody who wants to control people and extract things from them. And those are valid criticisms
Sure.
of religion that need to be addressed, and how we go about discerning who's truly on the spiritual path and who is a fraud.
Right.
Uh, that that's a necessary tool in the spiritualist toolbox.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but yeah, there are some valid criticisms from skeptics, and I don't shy away from those.
Right.
We all know in every religion there's a dark history.
Yeah.
There's a dark part to their history. It's not
Right.
all love and light, and and even to this day, there's still some darkness in religion uh, and in some churches, and uh, these things need to be addressed.
For sure. Yeah. And I also like, this is just an analogy, but I do think sometimes when you mentioned like the spiritual path being an art form, that um, there some I've seen people who say, "Hey, I can science whatever I want," and but really you can't. Science has a limited kind of domain, and it's like if you try to science or figure out empirically why something is beautiful, even I don't think you could in principle, but it's practically impossible to do that. And actually, ethical issues they're not amenable to like the scientific method. So um, I think that's one thing that's sort of interesting and it goes to that point you raised about like people don't always know what they're denying. Um, And that's something that I like to engage, maybe even atheists with, is how, um, and this really could be extended to anyone, but how do we know what is ethically correct, you know? And if you deny that there's a transcendent dimension to reality, and you deny that there's any sort of morality baked into, the baked into our reality, then I don't know how you are going to, like, how are you figuring out what's right and what's wrong? Um, and I know there are ways that people respond to that, but I still think that, well, anyway, I'll leave it there. But I just
Okay.
wanted to raise that point that, uh, that yeah, you can't always have a scientific mind and approach every problem in life that way.
You cannot. Science is about observation of the objective world. It has nothing to do with the subjective experience of,
Right, right,
and that is the subjective experience of people. Probably more based in uh, more real to them than anything outside their heads.
absolutely, yes,
But science has a dark history too. There's some very unethical things done in the name of science, but
sure,
particularly in the 19th century, and early 20th century,
mm.
is experiments on people, and if you're sensitive about the plight of animals on the planet, there's still some
Oh
really
yeah,
things done to animals in the name of science.
certainly.
So it's not all love and light in science either,
No, no, not at all. And that's a very good point. And also, I think whether it's intentional or not, this materialist outlook has given certainly capitalism a sort of platform or a philosophical underpinning to kind of treat people as machines and not really as living beings. And we kind of see that in just how people have to work and how the environment is treated. Um, so I don't want to say I'm not, you can't blame science necessarily, but this is like in absence of like some strong sort of either spiritual, kind of shared spiritual vision of the world. This is what we get.
Mhm. Yeah, science is important to us, and so is spirituality, and there many uh, philosophical thinkers have recognized the importance of each. And Albert Einstein was
Yeah.
the thinker who thought that he was a spiritual scientist,
Right. Right.
and we're running across more of those nowadays. I've got a book here about uh, the spiritual awakening experiences of academics and scientists in
Mm-hmm.
their own words, that they've had, and more scientists are coming out with
Mm-hmm.
their spiritual experiences. I think these science and spirituality can go hand in hand, and
Certainly.
we can use science to investigate matters like consciousness.
Yeah. Certainly.
Science has pretty much ignored consciousness through up to this point,
It.
and
Absolutely.
there's nothing more real to us than consciousness.
Right. Yeah.
Nothing more basic to our reality. To investigate matters of consciousness, and right there, you're going right into spirituality with the
Mm.
scientific method. You
Yeah.
know,
Right. That's a very good point.
um, uh, people who out the superiority of science over spirituality, or the supposed, in their minds, superiority, are missing the boat. They're not. And people who, by the same token, who discount science due to misguided religious beliefs, they're missing the same boat.
Right. For sure.
Um, both of these aspects of our culture are very important to us. And,
Absolutely.
I think they can work together.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, well, is there anything you'd like to say to wrap things up with? Oh,
Gosh,
well, is there a place online where people can find you?
yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'm on Facebook under my name, Tobin Swafford. and I have a group on Facebook called Universal Mysticism, and and both of those are public.
Hmm.
Uh, you can anybody can see those and anything that's posted in them. And I also have a new website. It's called popagape.com, and I put up blog posts there for people who aren't into social media. They can go to the website and read some of the things I post in my blogs there uh,
Excellent.
on the website. And the website's kind of new. Or it's brand new actually. I just made it last week, so it won't come up in a search engine right yet. I don't have enough traffic for Google to recognize it. So.
Well, yeah, well, we'll put a link to it here.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
yeah, I know what that's like.
yeah.
Yeah.
You just have to type in the type it into your web address and POPAGAPE.
And I have to say, I think it's a beautiful site. I love the images, and people should read your writing. Your writings are awesome, and yeah, I think it'll. Now, if people go to that site, can they comment? Can they interact on the
No,
site?
no. Unfortunately, I used a platform that doesn't have that, but they can send me a private message.
Yeah, well, that works. Yeah.
There's a link uh, on my website that goes directly to my email.
Mm.
Once you send that message, and I can interact with people that way through the website.
Well, that's good. Yeah.
And of course, on social media, if you're on Facebook, we can talk there if you want to,
Yeah.
either on the board or via private message.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And Universal Mysticism, that's a great place. Anyone can post there, right? Who's on Facebook. So,
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's good. And because I do think, whether it's through emails, private messages or whatever, it is nice to have conversations,
Yeah.
from time to time. And it's good. Yeah. If people are just kind of, yeah, I mean, sometimes that's what I shouldn't say that's what it's all about, but a part of the spiritual path, I think, is forging connections with people and like,
Yeah.
loving other people, building,
Yeah.
building. Yeah.
Spreading the
Spreading,
love.
spreading the love. Yeah. So you're doing a great job of that. Not an ordinary guy, Tobin Swafford. So, by no
Thank
means
you.
ordinary. So yeah. Any other final comments, remarks?
Um, if this time of year, it can be a dark time of year for some people, the holidays. And I just want to say, if you're experiencing great darkness right now, to hang on and reach out if you need to.
That's well said. I think sometimes people don't, if they've never gone through that, they don't realize how darkness and how scary it can be. So you're right. That's a great message, and light is on the way.
Yeah.
It can really get better.
Yes.
So and if you don't think it is, definitely reach out. Like you said, that's very important too. So well, we'll have to do this again soon. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Same planet, inhabitant Tobin Swafford. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to do this. And I hope you have a very happy new year.
Thank you. You too, Charles.
All right. Well, thank you.